Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Big Bros podcast. Welcome if it's your first time joining us on this joyous occasion, episode 100. Mate, handshake. We've made it.
We have made it.
We've made it.
Big ton. It's 100.
Raise the bat.
Exactly. Raise the bat. Take the helmet off. Let's salute the crowd because without you guys, we wouldn't be at episode 100.
Exactly. Oh, it's so exciting. And it's not long ago we were sitting here for episode 1. Shout out to the Why Not Us episode. And we've just got, so many more ideas in our minds to come over the next 100 and beyond. So yeah, it's just nice to take this moment, isn't it?
Exactly. You got to take stock of your milestones, don't you? But the listeners want to know one thing. If they're listening to this episode, they probably asked us a question because they want to be in the running for our giveaway prizes. And just a reminder that top prize is a $250 Lucas Group voucher. That second prize is a $150 Lululemon voucher. And our last prize is a $100 Blitz Bar voucher. So if you want to know if you've won that prize, stick around till the end. We'll announce all the winners. So without further ado, Jeremy, we're going to lock into some of these questions because they are fucking excellent. The first one comes from Genevieve Pittard. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced your name. How to be accepted and be comfortable with not being liked by everyone?
Just accept it and move on. That's my answer. Just accept that you're not going to be liked by everyone and move on. Confide in those around you that do like you, that love you and you love them. And the ones that don't and you're a bit iffy about, just accept it. Why would you want to be liked by everyone anyways?
I'll also add to that if you try to be liked by everyone, you run the risk of not being liked by anyone at that point because people are going to find reasons to dislike you for all sorts of reasons. And as you said, you just want to find those who are close enough to you that are genuine good people to reside in, because the truth is people always find an excuse not to like you. So as you said, better to just accept it, move on. And the truth is it's cool to be a little bit polarizing at times because that's a great way to filter who you align with versus who you don't.
Mika Smith says, how to encourage young boys to be more vulnerable, to talk about their emotions and not worry about what other people think.
I'm a huge believer that if you want young boys to encourage young boys to open up, you got to lead by example. I really reckon that you need to show young boys that they're going to be safe if they do open up. So you got to be really selective about the environments in which you do this in. So I know Tackle Your Feelings goes to a bunch of community sports teams, I think specifically football clubs, where you get these big brutish men who will never talk about their feelings. But what do? They get them in a circle and they get everyone to share a vulnerable story about themselves. And the reason they do that is because if one person does it, they lead by example. And if it's received well, others feel safe and confident enough to share it as well. So I think leading by example is a massive one.
I think what they also do in that example that you mentioned there is they have a task attached to the conversation as well. So as guys, we like to be hands-on. We like to be doing things. And that's why I think when it comes to mental health, especially amongst sporting organizations and amongst facilities and environments where it's quite male dominant in a way, males tend to open up when they're doing something. So that's why I think, there's that whole that whole stigma in a way of, going to the pub is not just about having a pint of beer. It's about, that opportunity for men to have a chat and open up about their emotions to one another. It's that whole action environment of doing something. So, if you are wanting to get men to open up in your environment that you're controlling, maybe get these young boys to be doing something, whether it is sport, whether it's Lego building, whether it's woodworking, something that they enjoy. Get them doing a task hands-on. Maybe think about prompts that you can actually initiate for discussion as well, and you'll see that they'll start to open up that way.
And just a caveat to that as well, in my clinical placement, whenever I've worked with someone quite young, especially young boys, the best thing you have to do is just wait for that rapport to develop. They're not going to be vulnerable with you if they don't trust you. So you got to spend a bit of time getting that trust in, because once you do, then they're more likely to want to open up.
Simon Mariel, would you rather a partner that physically cheats but is emotionally loyal, or emotionally cheats but is physically loyal?
You go first.
I'd say physically cheats. I'd much rather someone that physically cheats. I mean, they're both shocking, but physical cheating just means that I can say au revoir to them right then and there, and I don't need to worry about anything else. But if it was emotionally cheating, I would just have that constant war going on inside my head, thinking, is this bad? Is it not bad? Is this, acceptable? Is it not acceptable? But physical cheating, I feel like just makes it a lot easier to just say, on your bike, mate. See you later.
It's funny because my response to both those questions are like, what would I prefer is au revoir regardless, but what would be easier for me to reconcile? And I think the physical cheating would be, because it's way more objective. It just happened. Emotional cheating that can happen over a course of weeks to months. Your partner would have had to have actually gone out of their way, started messaging this person, maybe someone from work, maybe it's someone an old friend of theirs, and let that happen over a course and period of time. But if they just had a one night stand and they had just cheated on you, it'd be easier, in my opinion, to just say goodbye and relinquish that, because it can't be saved. But I think sometimes with emotional cheating, you might think, well, maybe I can win them back. But even then, emotions are a strong thing. So I think you move on in both cases, but physical cheating is definitely much easier to reconcile with, I reckon.
Sucks either way. Selrad says, how do you typically approach challenges or setbacks, and how has your mindset evolved when dealing with them?
I'm a huge believer that any setback requires you to go through rather than having to avoid that setback in the first place. So for example, if you're trying to achieve anything new in this life or gain some sort of skills, there's going to be tons of setbacks. That's the cost of doing business. It is a feature, not a bug, as Chris Williamson would say. So in this case, it's understanding that. It's understanding that in any obstacles are going to be a feature of whatever you do. So the best thing you can do is ask yourself, okay, what can this obstacle teach me? How can I ensure that I actually have the best mindset towards managing these obstacles? And it's also just understanding that they're going to make you better in the long run regardless. Like no obstacle, if you have the frame of thinking, which is, how is this going to work for me rather than against me? It's much easier to get through those challenges and obstacles that you may encounter.
Also, that dream chasing is not linear, whether it's a business, whether it's a podcast like this for us, whether it's your corporate job, whatever it might be, your journey and trajectory is not going to be linear. So those obstacles, invite those challenges. And if it is a pursuit where, maybe you're facing more challenges than you think that you are, than you'd like to, and you're maybe not seeing results right then and there, I like to think about the whole adage that Alex Hormozy says, which is, this is what hard feels like. This is what hard feels like. You're meant to be feeling these challenges. You're meant to be going through these obstacles, because otherwise everyone would do the thing that you're trying to do. If it was that easy, everyone would do it. So you should be feeling challenged. You should be going through these obstacles. This is what hard feels like. So remind yourself of that. And that just gives me the ammunition and the fire in my belly to keep cracking on.
It's a bit of a side note, but in life, in order to be exceptional, you need to do exceptional things. You can't just be ordinary. And it sounds like a massive cliche promoted by all these health and fitness gurus, but it's true. Like if you want to really stick out, your actions and behaviors need to resemble that of someone who is going to stick out, and that's through having actions that stick out. And that's the formula in and of itself. Now, David Gold writes, in a world where external success and achievement are often emphasized, how do you help young men in their 20s cultivate a sense of internal fulfillment and self-awareness, especially when the pressure to find their feet can sometimes feel overwhelming or confusing?
It's a big question.
It is. But I reckon you got to ask, so for a lot of young men in their 20s, the reason we want these big materialistic goods, the cool fancy car, owning that home, having tons of money, is because usually we're so concerned that other people will give us respect once we achieve those materialistic goods. And then the problem is if we start chasing those materialistic goods and we dedicate all of our resources to achieve them in order to achieve the goal that others will respect us, we'll always be chasing, because the reality is no one actually cares as much as we think they do. So I think the best thing to do to find your feet, and this is kind of general advice, is you find one skill that you're really, really good at, or that you could potentially get better at than other skills, and hone in on that. And then the thing with like materialistic goals, they're only materialistic until you give them a deeper meaning why. So it's like, if you want to have a big house, is it because you want to support your family and you want to have a big, mansion where you can play with your kids outside? You can have a tennis court where you can play every Saturday morning with your wife. You can have a swimming pool where you can frolic in the sun with your family. Those are deeper questions. Those are deeper reasons to materialistic desires.
James Atkinson says Kendrick versus Drake. I'm going to keep this quick and just say Drake. Drake's my guy. Way more than Kendrick. Always been a Drake fan. More so than Kendrick, and always will be. And his concert was fucking phenomenal as well. So if you guys did enjoy, let me know your thoughts. Now, Carol.zz says, what's a belief about relationships or success that you used to swear by but completely changed your mind about after a personal experience? What a fucking question. What's yours, Ilan?
I reckon that love's not enough. And it sounds like I used to be a massive believer especially when I was a teenager. Maybe it's too much exposure to rom-com movies that love can be enough. That assuming that you love that person, that they have that feeling of chemistry with you, that's going to be enough to almost overcome any relational difficulties. But it's just one piece of the pie. And yeah, it's a massive, important piece of that pie. But there's also other elements. How does that person handle conflict resolution? Do they have the same values as you? Do they have the same vision as you? What does their self-care look like? Are they able to emotionally regulate themselves in healthy ways? They might still love you a lot, and that might be a really cool prerequisite to have. And I think for me, that's something I overvalued, is if someone actually liked me, that was all that mattered. But, that's great for a short-term fling. But when you look long-term, you got to look at all those other things. So love is not enough. What about you?
For me, it's political views. I used to be of the belief that political views don't really matter when it comes to your partner. I used to think that you could work through different political views together. You could appreciate those differences and find common ground and work through them. And I learned that absolutely your political views do matter. Your political views shape who you will be with that person in the relationship. It shapes how you're going to talk to each other. It shapes how you're going to converse together. It shapes how you're going to raise your kids after all. If you're raising your kids in one way, you want to raise them in one way, and your partner wants to raise them in another way, I feel like some people might think that having those differences can be a good thing. And by all means, if that's your belief, sure. But I personally feel like I would, want to raise my kids in a home where they have strong beliefs themselves, they have strong values themselves, and they're pretty direct in how they believe. They're not wishy-washy with their thoughts as well. So I think that starts from the parents. And I think, parents should have those same beliefs, because what if your kid comes to you one day and says, what do you think about this? And your opinion is completely different to your wife's opinion. If for some people they might invite that as a family. Me, do I want that? I don't want that.
Well, it's because politics are a reflection of your values ultimately, right? It's a value judgment. So, and politics is divisive for a reason. So, as you said, if your child comes to you and you have a completely different opinion to your wife, that can spark a lot of issues, can't it?
Too Good to Resist says, if you could give one piece of advice to your teenage self, what would it be?
It's not that deep. That would be truly the advice I would give to myself when I was younger. And I still give this advice to myself now. It's like, not everything in life needs to be that deep, that purposeful. Like, it's great that we can chat about deeper meanings in life, philosophy and so forth. But the truth is, some things just happen because they do, Death happens because that's the natural order of life. And that's a really sad thing, and we grieve it and we do all the appropriate things necessary. But certain things in life are just neutral, right? It's not good or bad. It's how we perceive them. So not treating everything as like this cataclysmic event would be a great start for 16-year-old Ilan.
Nice. I think for me, it would be get in the gym earlier, eat more, lift heavier, and capitalize on those newbie gains. Because now that I have reached the stage, being in my mid-20s in the gym, been lifting for, a good a good part of a decade now. I just think, I look at the kids in the gym now, and I see 16-year-olds that are the same size as me, if not bigger. And I think, credit to them. They've really capitalized on their newbie gains, and I wish I did that in my teenage years. So now on to the next one. Simon says, do you think it's better to settle for a good enough partner or die single waiting for the one?
I think there's no such thing as the one. The one is the person you decide is the one. It's the person who you have to make that conscious decision when you're dating someone, whether they're going to be the one for you. And I think you look at things like compatibility, you look at chemistry, you look at all these aspects. But the truth of the matter is you can waste your entire life waiting for the one when they might not even exist. You cultivate the one by actually putting in effort. Now, that being said, if you're with someone and there is no attraction, there's no love, there's no compatibility, then you're not going to be able to cultivate her or him as the one because there's nothing to stand on. There's no healthy foundation. So I reckon you find someone who you're the most compatible with, and assuming you're on the same page, you ensure that both of you cultivate to make each other the one.
Like it. Carol.zz, what's a green flag in a relationship that most people don't talk about, but is actually a huge sign of a healthy connection? Now, I'm going to kick us off with this one, and I'm going to say going slow at the start. Going slow, not rushing into jumping into the bed together and ripping each other's clothes off. I mean, you want to give a little bit of a spark, and you want to give those signs that you do want to do those things, and you want to have that, that chemistry and attraction to, be implying those things in the future. But I think at the start of a relationship, a massive green flag is just taking it back a little bit, just going slow, not being so physical with the person, because it allows you to hone in on your values and discuss your values with one another if this is what you want in terms of a long-term relationship. If you really want to pursue someone long-term and you want to know if they're right for you, jumping into the bedroom with them, seeing them so often is breeding this false sense of closeness. Like at the start, you're still strangers. You're still strangers. You don't know each other on that deeper level yet. And having sex with one another and being so physically intimate and seeing each other 5 times a week in the first 2 weeks it's giving yourself into the neurochemicals, the oxytocin, the dopamine, and all of those neurochemicals are just breeding this false sense of connection. So take a back seat, go slow, and just really hone in on asking each other the questions about what you want, what you're looking for, and just going with the flow, taking it easy. And I think that is a massive green flag that isn't often spoken about.
I like that. Holly Hick writes, have you ever had to navigate jealousy or insecurity in a relationship, and how did you handle it? I don't think I personally have been ever so insecure and jealous, but I'd be lying if I said I've never had those moments. I think everyone to a certain extent can feel a bit insecure at the best of times, even your most stoic individuals. I think you got to remember, and like, what are you feeling insecure about? So is the question, are you feeling insecure that maybe you think maybe your partner settled for you, right? Because that might be a really common thing that a lot of people experience, that potentially they think their partner had other options, but they just settled for you. Well, at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, okay, well, why are they in this relationship with me in the first place? Have I told myself that they settled? Is that something that I've just fabricated? What am I basing that off? So I honestly think you start interrogating a lot of your insecure thoughts. I think if people have experienced retroactive jealousy, we've had a whole episode dedicated to that one. That one's a bit interesting as well. Best solution to that is don't maybe talk about your past. I don't think it's that important, because then, we create the anxieties in our head, right? We get a bit of a stimulus by hearing a bit of information about our partner's past, and then our brain, our imagination, it runs wild and it goes free, and not for the best. It doesn't have the best outcome. So I reckon in that case, avoid having to talk about your past. But it's just reminding yourself that they picked you in the first place, right? If shit was really that bad, they'd leave you. And also, why be insecure in the first place? Are you not enough? Like, why aren't you secure in yourself? What don't you have to offer? And that might sound like a bit of a tough love, bit of advice, but that's genuinely what I believe, is that You've got to tell yourself that you are enough. You've got to prove it through your actions and behaviors, right? You've got to make it so that if they broke up with you for whatever reason, you need to genuinely believe that they lost someone good. And if you haven't showcased those actions and behaviors and how you treat them, then I would dare to say that maybe there is some reason to be insecure. But I'm talking about like the big picture stuff. I'm not even talking about things like, your physical attractiveness and stuff. I'm talking about things like, do you show up when you need to? Are you respectful towards them? Do you have difficult conversations, but respectful conversations? So those are the things you need to show up in.
League of Rachel says, how should you resolve conflicts, especially when your partner is non-confrontational?
I'm answering this one. Okay. I think in this case, I'm not going to spill too many beans about my own personal life. But look, I will say this. You got to pick, just like we did with Mika Smith's question where that asked about how do we get boys to be more vulnerable. It's all about the environment and setting. Don't do it when they're hungry, because when someone's hungry, you're not going to get the most productive response from them. But truthfully, you do it when the person's calm and you frame the conversation with love rather than accusation. So you say, look, I feel as though this has been happening, rather than saying you've been doing X, Y, and Z to upset me, especially if they're non-confrontational, because if they are confrontational, they might become instantly defensive. And when they become defensive, you become defensive. And then it turns into an argument rather than a healthy discussion. So I'd say you frame it almost immediately with, hey, I'm saying this to you because I truly love you and I want to work on this together with you. And I really value your input. So would you care if I shared how I was feeling with you in this moment in time?
Beautiful. And we wrapped that up in last week's episode as well about, how do you just talk about things, get males to open up. And when it comes to conflict too. And we said, just express that you're coming from that place of care. Say that I'm here because I care about us. I'm not here to finger point.
Hello, it's Bunny writes, how important is physical attraction / sexual chemistry? Is personality enough?
Yeah, look, personality is not enough. You need to have sexual chemistry and compatibility, because we know that those two things are very different. You can have the chemistry, but do you have those green links of compatibility? You might not. So physical attraction and sexual chemistry is absolutely important. It's not the end of the world though, but if you're looking for a girlfriend or boyfriend and mum and dad are telling you that it's not all about looks, they're right that it's not all about looks, but it does fucking matter. And they're lying if they say that it doesn't matter at all. You need to be sexually attracted to that person in order to do certain things with them, right? And it doesn't need to be like, you don't need to think that they're a 10 out of 10 and they're, supermodel type of attractiveness, but it needs to be enough for you to have that sexual chemistry and compatibility, and that'll grow as well with their personality.
But it needs to grow from some sort of baseline, and that baseline needs to be high enough that it can grow. Like if we're putting it into numbers, if you have 2 out of 10 physical attraction to them, but you love their personality, you got to be realistic with yourself. Is their personality that great that you're going to form a greater sexual connection to them?
And want to rip their clothes off?
Probably not if your baseline attraction level is quite low. But let's say it was like a 7 or 8 out of 10 and their personality was fantastic. Then by all means, that stuff is going to grow and you'll feel more closer to them because you weren't disgusted by them in the first place.
Hello, Sunray. What is the extent of change you would change for someone before you lose who you really are? Another blinder of a question.
Take us away.
Yeah, and this is one that is relatable to me and relatable to you. We've discussed these ones in our past episodes, but it's a great question. I think, look, me personally, I went through this myself, in a past relationship where you mistaken change for compromise. I think that is the key point here. Are you changing who you are, or are you just compromising on certain things? And I think when you get to the point where you realize that you're not just compromising on things and you're not just respecting their boundaries, if those boundaries are actually compromising on your own boundaries, and it's happening for a lot of different things, and it's happening to the point where you're losing sight of who you are as a person and you're not able to be your true self. You're not able to be expressive. Maybe you're walking on eggshells with that person. Maybe you're not able to say the things that you would normally say, act the way you would normally act. there's recipe for you're actually just changing as a person, and all of a sudden you're a shell of who you are. So I think pick up on the habits of when this is happening to you. Is it a once-off thing where you're changing certain things for someone, or is this happening quite excessively where you're actually losing sight of who you are?
I would go even more stronger than that and say never change who you are. The person that, if you're with someone and they fell in love with you when you were completely yourself, you're your own happy-go-lucky personality, and then throughout that course of the relationship, they start telling you that they want you to change who you are fundamentally to meet their own needs, then they're pretty much getting you to go away from the person they initially fell in love with.
Yeah.
So I think that's another point we have to consider as well. But you should never change who you are, because first of all, you'll lose respect for yourself.
Yeah.
And they'll lose, your partner will ultimately subconsciously lose respect for you as well, because you can't stay true to who you are. Now, there's a difference between compromise. I don't think you should ever compromise who you are. If you're someone who values, give me a value.
Yeah. If you want to see that person 3 times a week and they want to see you once a week.
Yeah, big deal. Who cares? Is that really changing your sense of self? But
No.
If they started telling you, I know that you value independence, right? And
Yeah.
they start telling you, but I don't want you to be as independent anymore. I want you to spend every waking hour with me. That's a bit different from that other example, because now you're telling me that this core value of independence that I love and I froth and it fills my cup, right? Like I love to go on walks on my own and recharge my own battery by being on my own. And that's what contributes to my sense of self. You're telling me I need to change that in order for you to feel less insecure? Nah, fuck that. Get out of that relationship. Hence, if you find that you need to change who you are fundamentally, your sense of self in that relationship, it's because the person you're in a relationship with is wanting you to be a fantasized, idealized version of you that doesn't even exist.
Sterling Ellis says, in your opinions, rank from least to most: health and well-being, career, romantic relationships, friendships, and individual experience.
You go first.
Health is wealth. So for me, I'm going to say health and well-being is number 1. If you don't have that, you don't have everything else. I'll then say friendships. I'll then say romantic relationships. Then individual experience and career last.
You know what? I'm actually
very hard, but
incredibly aligned with you on everything, except I would switch personally romantic relationships, and I'd put that above friendships. And the reason is because your romantic partner will ultimately be your best friend for life in a different form, because you're going to be spending the most amount of time with this person. So the thing is, if you get shitty with a friend, you don't need to get a divorce with that friend. You can just say, all right, I'll see you in a few weeks or whatever. And that friendship might remain the same. And you might just need that time to decompress. But if you're in a relationship with someone, as much as it's important for you to love them, you need to like them as well. You need to like them as though they are a friend of yours as well. And you're going to be spending so much time. And they say one of the biggest career decisions you'll ever make is who your romantic partner is, because they'll either be your greatest source of relaxation and enjoyment or your biggest source of stress and just annoyance. So pick wisely.
See, for me, so that sounds like why I disagree is because that sounds like a very pessimistic outlook on the whole relationship side of things. And that's why I would say having friendships is such a bigger thing than just the one romantic partner. Like there are so many people that, go through life that don't get married and they've got an abundance of friends and they are fucking happy and they're loving life and they're living life and they are so content. And then you see the other side where there are people that have 0 friends. They're in a marriage. They might be happy. They might not be happy, but they've got 0 friends and they're fucking miserable. So that's why I've got friendships absolutely before romantic relationship.
It doesn't have to be dichotomous. Just because you've got a good marriage doesn't mean you don't have good friends. You can have both. And, I think that's what we're both promoting. I'm just saying, I'm going more from the logic that if you're going to be spending more time with your romantic partner than your friends, if you want to get married, of course, and have a family, then ultimately, just by virtue of how much time you're going to be spending with them, you probably want to optimize for the best partner possible.
Interesting.
That's just my thinking. No wrong or right, though.
I think when it comes to this one, like I've always said to myself in terms of like getting into a relationship, that I would only get into a relationship if the fun that I was having with that person that I want to date is like on par and better than being single and just being around my mates. So I think by employing that mentality, it shows that like, okay, I'm not going to just settle for any romantic relationship. Like it needs to be fun. And like, if that fun is not going to be matched with like the fun that I can have just, with my mates and with myself, then, why would I want it? So I think that's why.
Would you agree that you would put more emphasis in picking a romantic partner than you would picking a friend? It's much easier to pick a shit friend because you can toss them to the side much easier. And as awful as that sounds, but it's true. Whereas with a romantic partner, you have to be fucking selective about that. That's important. I agree with you. You don't want to settle. You don't want to settle. But what you do want to do is make a really considered and thoughtful choice. That's why I'm saying the more importance you place on that decision-making process merits it as a more important kind of rank in that hierarchy. That's my reasoning.
Interesting. Nice. Okay.
Next.
Ruby Jameson, take it away.
Ruby Jamison asks, what is the backstory behind starting the podcast, and in what ways do you feel like the podcast helps listeners? Okay, how did we start our podcast? That's a great question. Was it on a drunken night out like every other broadcast?
It wasn't on a drunken night out, and that's why this came with a lot of thought, believe it or not. It wasn't just a 3.5 pints of Guinness deep and, it's still not that late in the night and we turn to each other and say, bro, we should start a podcast. It was actually something we were talking about for a good year. It was around COVID time. I remember us talking about it, and we went on walks together and we were talking about doing it. And funny enough, we just didn't do it. Just like a lot of people just don't commit to doing the thing. We just didn't do it. We kept putting it off. We were scared about, what people would think of us, what friends would think of us, what people in the community would think of us. And then we just reached a point where we said, fuck it. Like, we always have great conversations amongst ourselves. So why not have those conversations with a camera and a mic in front of us, and hopefully others can find some form of value, because we were always drawn to these types of conversations and hearing these conversations from those that were, in a relatable sphere to us and were slightly older than us as well. And we just thought, why can't we just be that relatable voice to others as well? We're enjoying these conversations. Hopefully others can as well.
I think something that you're forgetting to mention is that you weren't initially on board with the idea. What I remember specifically happening is, through COVID, we'd go on these fantastic walks because that's all you could do. And we'd have these deep chats. And I would often share these stories about, or perspectives that my older brother would have kind of provided me with. And I said, this is like a really good litmus test for what's relatable to people our age. Things about entering the job force, relationships, friendships, all these massive milestones that everyone in their late adolescence, early adulthood is going to encounter. And I said to you, we offer our perspectives on this shit all the time to one another. Would it be useful to people who don't have an older brother or an older sister to share that perspective with? Some people don't even have parental figures who teach them how to shave, if they're a young man. And these are important conversations to be had. And I think you said, like, what credibility do we have? And I said, we don't. We make our own credibility. And I think it got to a point where we're like, what, fuck it. Why not us? And that was the exact title of our first episode. And what value does it bring to listeners? Well,
that's for you guys to decide.
That's for you guys to decide. But I hope it's to teach you something that you didn't know before.
Yeah.
Next question is Brandon Griffiths. What quote/saying were you told/taught as a kid that has played a transformative role in your life to this point? Will you teach it to your children?
Yeah, I think this one, I mean, a lot of different quotes, but the one that first came to my mind that I was always told was from my grandfather, my Zeta. And he would always say to me, Jeremy, all will happen in good time, whether that's finding a girlfriend, whether that's your career, whether that's, just whatever it was. He would always just said, all will happen in good time. Just enjoy the moment that you're in. You're young. Don't rush things and just be patient. And that's exactly that. And I was extremely close with my grandfather. He's since passed a couple of years ago, and think about him pretty much every day. And he would always say that quote. And it's basically just it's not a deep message, but it's one that has just allowed me to always stay present in the moment, enjoy the moment, and and just have fun with it. And that's why I think I always come back to that discussion of finding enjoyment in the mundane, because like if you can have fun in the everyday type of moments, then the even better moments are going to feel even greater. So all will happen in good time. Just don't rush things. Just go at your own pace and enjoy those times and those moments.
I love it. Jordan Benelli writes, which of your episodes was the most favorite to make, and which one would you recommend? Honestly, I like more of our controversial episodes. I think they've always been fun. So there was one about whether body count matters or not. So not the amount of people you've killed, but the amount of people you've had, the birds and the bees with. This other one I've really enjoyed making have been our Q&A questions, because it's actually fun. So this one I'd say is probably up there, top 3 most exciting episodes I personally had the pleasure of recording with you, my friend, because getting to answer what our listeners want to hear from us is kind of cool. And it also, I like the more controversial episodes as well. So can males and females truly be friends in a platonic way? Love doing that one. If I had to recommend one episode, which is really, really hard, I really liked when Bradley Dryberg came on and we spoke about, his mindset through battling cystic fibrosis, running a marathon, and kind of just his resilience throughout that. That's a big theme in my life. I love the whole idea of resilience. So having him on to chat about his own experience was unbelievable, and he is truly inspirational. Maybe he doesn't like that label, but it was a great episode, and I think a lot of listeners would derive a ton of value from it. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think the controversial episodes were ones that we were very we were fearful of creating initially. We were scared of stepping on people's toes and maybe coming across in different ways. And as you guys can see, if you look back through our last 100, those controversial type episodes only started around like in the 50 pluses, because we were fearful. We approached those with trepidation initially, but we've grown to love them, and we've grown to realize that, like we said in one of our earlier questions, that if you stand for nothing, then you're not going to be.
You'll fall for everything.
You'll fall for everything. That's the one.
Anything.
Exactly. So we've learned to be more bold, say our opinions, express them, and if that causes a little bit of ruffled feathers, then so be it. But it's fun.
Well, it's an excellent segue into our next question, because if we ever get cancelled, well, at least we'd get cancelled for being authentic. Because the next question, Tams and Wellness writes, is cancel culture progressive or just online bullying? Now, this is a bit more of a divisive one, but I'll share my 2 cents on it. I think in this day and age, we've gotten to the point now where free speech as an idea, it's something that needs to be protected, because it's very easy nowadays to disagree with someone and disagree with something that someone has said and label it as hate speech. And the problem is that who defines hate speech? What defines something as meritable of having that person be shut down from a social platform, right? And I'm not going to get overly political with it, but I do believe it's gotten to a point now where it's starting to be used as a weapon of bullying, of censorship, because my huge belief here when it comes to any terrible, bad idea is I might disagree with it, I might hate it, I might feel disgusted by it, but I don't really believe in cancellation, because if you cancel someone, you're just suppressing that person. And that's not the best way to get rid of bad ideas. The best way to get rid of bad ideas is by countering them with even better ideas. And that requires free speech. So if you start trying to cancel everyone that you disagree with, then it sets a really dangerous precedent, because who are you allaying the control of labeling what is hate speech and what isn't?
And you just putting yourself on a more superior pedestal than others as well, by saying that you're canceling someone because they've said one thing which was maybe from 75 years ago. Like, who are you to say that, firstly? And you come across as a very inauthentic person yourself, a very insecure person yourself. And I think one that gets brought up a lot of times in the podcast space on social media is the divisiveness of someone like a Joe Rogan. There's a lot of people out there, a lot of women out there that say if he listens to Joe Rogan, it's a red flag, he's cancelled. And I just think that's the biggest bullshit ever, because here is a guy that, yes, he might be divisive in some of the things he says, some of the guests he has on, but there is so much good from this person as well, and so much good you can take. And even with figures that are maybe more so on the spectrum of quite negative and could be cancelled, for lack of better words, quite easily, there is probably still a lot of merit in some of the things they might say. You know, even if it's only 10% of the 100% that they say, I'm of the belief that you shouldn't just cancel anyone. You should safely disagree with them and propose valid arguments as to why, like you've said yourself, you know, try one up it in a way, in a positive way that creates good discussion and thoughts. But to just go and mark a big red cross through someone, you just look like the insecure one.
Unless someone's strictly inciting violence,
of course,
then I believe everything's game. So whether what Kanye West is doing now merits inciting violence, I'm not sure, and I'll let Elon Musk handle the decisions on whether to deplatform him. But I think generally speaking, I'm not even looking at the extreme examples of someone like Kanye West. Like you could actually make an example, be like, okay, he's not all there. He should probably be deplatformed for his own well-being. But people who have like a slightly more contrarian political view that's backed up by evidence, but they get cancelled. But someone who is a raging, you know, bigot on the platform who might have really terrible views, but since it's kind of more in line with mainstream society and it's what's popular and trendy, they don't get deplatformed. Like, you know, Andrew Tate, he got deplatformed, and I don't really care about that guy. I think he's a complete douchebag. But if he got cancelled, but there were other people like dictators who were using Twitter at the time. So like, I think the Ayatollah in Iran who was inciting violence against various ethnic groups. He gets a platform. So like, who decides who gets cancelled? And I think that's what shits me off as well, is because none of us, if you can't decide what's hate speech, then you may as well just have a free game policy where the best idea wins.
Chloe J 999, if you were to create a Big Bros rulebook for life, what would be the first 3 rules and why?
I'll go first. It's not that deep, bro. I've mentioned it earlier in the episode, but it's not that deep. I think when you can just strip away, like I think finding meaning in things is great. It gives you a great purpose. But sometimes the meaning is that it's just not that deep, which enables you to not attach yourself to things that are just is, right? Like, oh, the milk fell on the floor. Yeah, it is what it is. Doesn't that feel a little bit better than being like, fuck, the milk fell on the floor. Now my breakfast is ruined. This is going to take me 10 minutes to clean up. It just allows you to live life in a more carefree way.
Love it.
What do you think?
Yep, I completely agree. Great first rule. Second rule I would say is, and it attaches to that as well, and one that I always harp on about, is just finding enjoyment in the mundane. Again, it's just a rule about enjoyment. It's a rule about not taking life so seriously, not attaching yourself so seriously to tasks. Find enjoyment in the everyday and you will be a happy motherfucker. You will have infectious energy and you will be able to go through life enjoying the simple things. And when you come across the things that are above simple, you're going to have even more enjoyment from it. So find enjoyment in the mundane is definitely rule number 2. What do you reckon number 3 is?
I think stop waiting to find your purpose. And what I mean by that is purpose is important, but don't put your life on hold in order to try and find it. And this goes out to everyone who goes traveling for 2-3 years, delaying what they believe they know they need to do at home in order to sit under a lotus tree in some meditation village in Indonesia and find their purpose. Because purpose isn't going to just drop down. Use that beautiful Kinder Egg analogy, and I really...
You are not a Kinder Egg.
You are not a Kinder Egg. It's not you cultivate that purpose, and you guess how you cultivate it. Try new things. Your rate of experimentation with everything in life needs to be 10x'd, because the reality is if you do that, you'll find the things you're good at, you'll find the things that you're bad at, and then the things that you find that you're good at, you'll be like, okay, I kind of create value for other people in some way, whether it's a business, whether it's a job I do, whether it's music, entertainment, it doesn't matter. But the point is you then see what actually fills your cup. What do you become happy with? That when you put your head on the pillow at night, you're not thinking, oh, geez, that was crap. You're thinking, wow, that brought a lot of enjoyment to my life and clearly to other people. That's how you find your purpose.
Created by Katie. We're finishing off with this one. If you could choose anyone to play yourself in a movie, who would you pick and why? Now, honestly, tough question. There's a lot of great people out there, a lot of great actors, and when I thought about this one, I was thinking maybe along the lines of, look, I love Matthew McConaughey, I like Tom Cruise, and I think I was steering more towards the Tom Cruise type of person I would choose.
You so would.
What does that mean?
You just would. Like, he does his own stunts. He's a good-looking guy.
It's not because of the stunts.
Like, he's got all these admirable qualities. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Me saying you would is more just like, great. Like, you love the qualities he espouses.
Well, yes, he is a stuntman, but I'm not a stuntman at all, you know. So it wouldn't be because of that, but it would be because, yeah, I see him as a pretty charismatic guy. You know, he doesn't take his, like, in terms of his roles, not too serious. He's not a serious motherfucker. He's that happy-go-lucky, cool-headed kind of guy, and he's also, with that though, got that, like, you know, that softness and sensitivity to him. And I picked up on that really in his movie Rain Man. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. I think yes, it's Dustin Hoffman, I believe, alongside of him. And Tom Cruise in that movie just really stood out to me as, here is this cool, charismatic guy, but also with that softness and sensitivity to him that he is more than happy to portray. So that's why I would choose Tom Cruise. What about you? Who are you choosing as playing yourself in a movie?
Mate, I'll be honest, I haven't given this much thought just because I don't watch that many movies, and my older brother gave me a bit of shit for it the other week. But you know what? Morgan Freeman. Why not? I loved him in Shawshank Redemption.
Accurate.
I love the way he narrates. I love the way he tells stories. And I think that's enough for me to be like, you know what? I wouldn't mind if he played me in a movie. I mean, I don't look anything like him. He's also like triple my age, but he's still a G.
Similar characteristics, deep thinkers, deep conversationalists. Accurate.
Oh, what a compliment. Now, Jeremy, here's the exciting bit. We're going to
what you've all been waiting for.
We're going to be announcing the 3 winners of our giveaway prizes. Should we add a little bit of music for suspense, or would that be cruel?
Nah, look, no drum rolls for this one, I reckon, because you guys have been waiting and sticking around for this one. So without further ado, coming in third prize, the $100 Blitz Bar voucher. And this lucky person has pumped us with questions as well. And so we're very grateful. It is Carol.zz. She asked, what's a belief about relationships or success that you used to swear by but completely changed your mind about after a personal experience? And we've chosen this one just because of how relatable it is to us and because of how reflective it was as well. Love it. Number 2, who is it?
We've got Chloe J999 with the question of, if you were to create a Big Bros rulebook for life, what would be the first 3 rules and why? Now, you've won yourself a $150 Lululemon voucher that can be redeemed. That could be used across all of Australia, really. But what I will say is I really liked this question, and I liked it because it actually got me to think. And a lot of questions got me to think, but this one specifically had something about it. It's like something about the top 3 rules. Like, if we want to captivate someone to know, you know, what are our most important lessons and how can we best convey that to people, that takes a lot of thinking, and I fucking love that one. What's our number 1 winner? Drum roll.
The grand prize, drum roll, please. And this is going to, again, another reflective, thought-provoking question, and that is to Hello Sunray. You are going to redeem a $250 Lucas Restaurant Group voucher, and your question was, what is the extent of change you would change for someone before you lose who you really are? What a blinder of a question. You know, that is one where you've definitely shoveled deep into your soul down below there, and you've gone to the crux of something quite deep and personal, and we just love that one. I think anyone can answer that with a lot of truth to who they want to be and what extent they would want to go down to answer it.
I gotta be honest, I read that question initially and I went down like a rabbit hole of memories of my like ex-relationships and how I was, and, you know, the reasons why I broke it off, and I thought about it, and it's like this question like spoke to me.
Yeah.
I think it spoke to you as well, didn't it?
Absolutely.
So, you know, very deserving winner. We've got to do more giveaways in the future, I reckon, because some of these questions are great. I think our listenership, they're awesome.
Awesome.
Great
and yeah,
question.
it's a credit to you guys. So thank you guys for being a part of this giveaway and for being involved with our first 100 episodes. And we can't wait for you guys to get involved with the next 100 and beyond. We had so many questions that we couldn't get through all of them. We wish we could, but
They'll be podcast episodes.
Yeah, we will by all means use those as inspiration for what you guys want to hear in the future. So thank you. Happy Tuesday. Have a good week. Anything else, Ilan?
Well, they should probably message us once we've announced the names, shouldn't
Exactly. If we've mentioned you, if you are one of the lucky winners, reach out to us over onto our DMs and we will go from there and flick you across your prizes.
Guys, if you've been enjoying our content, please do rate us 5 stars. It helps us produce great content. It helps us push the Big Bros podcast through the Spotify algorithm so other people like yourselves can get involved with our podcast. It does help us a lot. Get that rating up, please. We do really appreciate it. Other than that, I hope you guys have a lovely Tuesday, and bye-bye.